Hi, good afternoon and welcome to the 2 p.m. agenda of the House Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee meeting for our 23 bill agenda, the second of 23 bill agenda that Vice Chair ably handled yesterday. Welcome. We've never had this many people before, so it's a sign that society is getting back to normal. I'm still only seeing 2 or 3 people in the audience for our several hours of CPC. So I just want to say a hearty welcome and thank you for joining us and thank you for participating in democracy today. I did want to go over a few housekeeping items to help facilitate today's proceedings. If this is your first time either testifying in person or virtually with us in a CPC hearing, and I'd ask if you could abide by this. First off, if you are testifying virtually, if you can ensure that your profile in Zoom, the name is listed in accordance with what you submitted testimony under, that helps our tech people be able to highlight you and spotlight you faster as you testify. Please keep yourselves muted on Zoom until you are called. Once you're called, please unmute yourself and then you can go ahead and testify. Please also ensure that your camera is on when you are testifying. That helps us, as well as all we can see is now one TV with you testifying. If you are here in person, when you are called, please approach our fancy new podium and you can testify from there. Please also note that we do have, because we have so many bills that we need to get through by tomorrow's filing deadline, we do have a 2-minute time limit. So once it goes off, we do ask that you start to summarize your testimony. That would be very helpful. And also, everybody has been terrific at this in CPC, but I just feel like given the time we are in nationally, I think one of the things that makes us so special is that we continue to extend aloha to each other, irrespective of how our opinions and perspectives may differ. So I would just ask for your cooperation in perpetuating one of the things that I think makes Hawaii so special as we begin today's proceedings. With that, we'll move to our first agenda item, SB 3025, relating to digital currency licensing program. And this would establish a program for the licensure, regulation, and oversight of a digital currency company. Members, please note this is substantially similar to HB 2108, which we also passed out of this committee earlier on in the session. With that, we have our first testifier, Commissioner Ikeda with the Division of Financial Institutions at DCCA, offering comment.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Iris Ikeda, the Commissioner for the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Division of Financial Institutions. So we're offering support of this this is not an admin bill, of this bill to establish the program for licensure, regulation, and oversight of digital currency companies. So as I noted earlier, this bill is a work in progress, and I continue to meet with other stakeholders. So to that end, I offer a couple of amendments to sections 8 and 9 of the bill, which is the anti-money laundering and cybersecurity programs. And that's because I've been working with FinCEN on the anti-money laundering program. They have they're undergoing the review of the Federal Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2020. And are suggesting different changes. And I'm also working with the U.S. Department of Treasury on the cybersecurity protocols. Those pillars that I've asked for in our testimony are not going to change. Just the individual types of reporting might change a little bit with the changes that are being discussed with both agencies. So with that, we ask that the bill keep moving and that our amendments are also included. I'd also like to note that this bill is probably more complete than the House Bill 2108, just because the Finance Committee was unable to put in the amendments that we had previously asked for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. We also have Jasper Wong with Powwow in support. Not here. Offering support. Next, we have the Hawaii Technology Development Corporation in support.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair, members of the committee, Len Higashi with Hawaii Technology Development Corporation. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill and support the changes requested by Commissioner Ikeda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Len. We also have Waihou in support. Purple Maya Foundation in support. We have the Grassroot Institute of Hawaii offering comments. Not here, okay. Central Pacific Bank in support. Next, we have on-time individual testimony from Dagan Bernstein in support.
Hello, Commission. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to provide testimony in support of this bill. I'll be brief. My name is Dagan. I'm a resident of Hawaii Island, and I also am an educator and a musician, and both of these industries will be can have the potential to be positively impacted by access to digital currencies in the state of Hawaii. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to verbally offer my support as well as my written testimony. Thank you very much. I think this is important to support innovation in the state, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dagan. We also have supportive individual testimony from Trung Lam, Nathaniel Harmon, Brad Uchida, Gregory Dunn, Eric Purcell, Katie Jackson in opposition.
Hello.
Hi, Katie, please go ahead.
Hi, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to make comments on this bill. Wanted to come and just respectfully oppose the bill, SB, because of a couple of reasons. We feel like this bill would be better served to be heard in a year or two because of the executive order President Biden passed March 9th, asking his federal agencies to come up with a coherent regulatory strategy. We feel as if Hawaii were to get ahead of that, this bill would need to be amended multiple times in the years ahead, and we just think it's wiser to adopt the task force bill with a possible amendment to extend the sandbox and allow the regulatory environment to settle first. Second reason we oppose this bill is we believe that this bill is actually not the best fit for Hawaii. It's put together in kind of a way in which the definitions kind of contradict each other, opening up users of crypto and the ecosystem here for criminal and possible legal liabilities. We would recommend that this bill not be passed this session and that we have opportunity to kind of think long-term and create an environment where Hawaii businesses can come. The third reason we oppose this bill is it's similar to the 2015 New York BIT license law. That bill was passed. Unfortunately, most of the crypto companies and the blockchain companies left the state because of the high legal costs and compliance costs. So we think something similar could happen here in Hawaii if this bill were allowed to go through. And finally, we think there's a solution. We think the task force bill with an amendment to extend the sandbox by 2 years would give us the breadth and the time necessary to create good laws, which could then take in the federal executive order by President Biden. With that, sir, thank you for letting me make these comments.
Thank you very much, Katie. We also have late testimony from Cloud Nalu in support. They are not present. That's all the testimony we have recorded for SB 3025. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in this measure? Anyone else wishing to testify on SB 3025? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Vice Chair Kitagawa.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Ikeda, can I ask a question? So I have a question about the sandbox and how that works, because the sandbox, from my knowledge, is ending this June. Is that correct?
Yes.
So does the department have the authority to extend that sandbox by itself, or what happens to people who say this legislation doesn't pass? What happens to people who are currently investing in the sandbox if the sandbox expires in June?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So the sandbox is ending for consumer transactions June 30th of this year, and then they have another 6 months to divest their holdings or their wallet will be closed to them. The Digital Currency Innovation Lab, so there's no extension on that particular program because it was a short-term research project.
All of the consumers and all of the companies were told that, that it was a research project and it was going to end. So we don't have an intent to extend it.
Okay, so there's no intent to extend it. So if there are people who are participating in the sandbox now, they have until the end of the year to get their money back. And then at that point, if these laws do not pass, then there is no option for cryptocurrency in Hawaii.
Well, these companies could, so what we did was I suspended the money transmitter laws, which is the laws that other states have been using. And one of the reasons I did that was because we wanted to study whether or not this was actually money transmission or not. Throughout these last 2 years, we've determined that it's not really money transmission. There's some aspects to that, but there's aspects to other types of transactions. And so we wanted this law to actually reflect what these transactions and activity was all about.
Okay, but pretty much then after December, if these laws don't pass, there's no, people here couldn't participate in cryptocurrency.
Well, they could if those companies would apply for a money transmitter license.
Okay, so they would have to do money transfer.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Representative Parr.
Oh, Commissioner, please stay. Oh. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here in person. So very quickly, you just heard the previous testifier talking about federal legislation and that the possibility of Hawaii passing something now could possibly be premature. Obviously, I think you admittedly feel that some of the language in this bill still needs to be refined. So that said, how do you refute the testimony of the previous testifier?
So the one thing that I would say is the president has provided his executive order. And to us, that shows, for the states anyway, that kind of shows that regulation is needed to help, kind of stem the type of activity that the president is trying to stop. Without that executive order, we have really no control over all of these companies that were transacting with Russia to or from Russian citizens. So that's one that kind of shows that we need some regulation over this. The second thing is that with that executive order, like she said, like Ms. Jackson said, the agencies are supposed to get together. We know how long that takes. And, we waited 5 or 6 years for those agencies to do some other coordinated rulemaking, which we're still waiting for. I'd also like to point out that the states are usually kind of the big sandboxes for a lot of these new ideas. And, as I said, this is the first licensure bill of its kind. And so, Hawaii would be leading the way to having this new scheme.
Commissioner Ikeda, are you aware of New York's regulation of cryptocurrency law?
Yes.
Okay, so I mean, I've just been doing some research on it, and it's my understanding that many of the cryptocurrency companies actually left the market after the regulation went forward. And again, we understand the whole purpose of regulation is to protect the consumer. But that said, I'm just trying to understand exactly what with other states that have in fact passed some type of regulatory scheme, how it in fact impacts the industry as a whole and affects our consumers with respect to, obviously protection is first and foremost is paramount, but again, what other impact, unintended consequences could it have with respect to other companies actually leaving the market?
Right. So the New York bit license. So this law is not really like the New York bit license. I did take some components of it, the parts that were actually working. But the other parts that were not working, I did not adopt as part of our proposal. The other states are they're all using the money transmitter license in their state as a way to license or not license these cryptocurrency companies.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, then thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, also related to cryptocurrency and digital currency. This is SB 2695 SD2 relating to currency, and this establishes a blockchain and cryptocurrency task force. I'm so sorry to make you come right back up, Commissioner Ikeda. This is your afternoon calisthenics in CPC.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm just gonna stand here.
Yeah.
So again, my name is Iris Ikeda. I'm the Commissioner for the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Division of Financial Institutions. And we are providing comments on this bill to establish a blockchain and cryptocurrency task force. So we support a task force to create a master plan for the state. We do note that this particular measure has been narrowed down to the purview of DCCA, which is something that we know something about, instead of sort of the world. We do think that to do the study, we do not have any resources to do the study. I don't have an extra person to help us, create this task force. And if this would involve some travel for any of the other task force members, we do not have budget for that. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Next, we have Waihou in support. Grassroots Institute of Hawaii offering comments. Not here. We have Dagan Bernstein again, offering support.
Aloha, my name is Dagan Bernstein, and thank you again, Commissioner, for giving me the opportunity to testify in my support of creating a task force. I just wanted to speak a little bit more in detail to this one rather than the other bill, because I have full trust in Ms. Ikeda and their group in putting together the proposal for the regulations. But in terms of a task force, I just wanted to speak as an educator here on Hawaii Island, that as we look at the full scope of the role of cryptocurrency in the state of Hawaii, that there is a big role of within our educational institutions and a lot of opportunities for innovation. And I think a task force will enable more participants to sit at the table and discuss the full scope of how this technology will look in our state. And I just wanted to say that I have spoken with many educators as well in my role as a board member of the Hawaii Society for Technology and Education, that there's an interest in blockchain and Web3 technologies. And I appreciate your time for allowing me to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein, for joining us. We also have Brad Uchida in support. Eric Purcell in support. Katie Jackson in support.
Hello, Chair. Thank you. We really believe this is a great bill. Hawaii is considered one of the primary leaders for crypto innovation with the digital sandbox. And along with the proposed amendments of offering task force spots to someone in the legal community, the crypto legal community, and the security community, if we extend this sandbox, another amendment suggested to 2 years from now, it would allow us to take the time and thoughtful regulation necessary once we know where President Biden is headed with this. So we firmly support this task force bill as along in conjunction with other state organizations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Katie. We also have Cloud Nalu, Liam Grist in support. Not here. Members, please note that's the extent of testifiers who have proffered testimony on SB 2695, SD2. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2695? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we will move on from digital currency to broadband. Next, we have SB 2076, SD2, HD1. This is relating to broadband service infrastructure, and it establishes the Hawaii Broadband Infrastructure Authority, as well as defining broadband equity within the Hawaii Broadband and Digital Equity Office, as well as including appropriations. On SB 2076, we have the Department of Health in support. Next, we have the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, Daintree Bartolus. In support.
our testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you for being here a second day in a row. We also have DBED offering comments.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Bert Lum. I'm the Broadband Strategy Officer here in the Hawaii Broadband and Digital Equity Office in DBED, and I am on behalf of Director Mike McCartney. We stand on our testimony offering comments. I do want to point out that the version that is currently being reviewed changed quite drastically from the Senate version that came over as SD2. And as SD2, it was primarily a broadband digital equity office bill. And now it has sort of transformed into the broadband infrastructure authority bill. So just my comments basically summarize is that we should really consider whether the authority is necessary at this time. It might be premature. There's a lot of work that needs to be done and a lot of work that's going to be done over the course of the next 12 months. And then, of course, we do support the fact that in Part 3, there is the language in support of the Broadband Digital Equity Office. And, of course, there is the appropriation for that in Part 5. So I am available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bert. We also have DCCA offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee. I'm Kat Awakuni Cologne on behalf of DCCA. DCCA stands on its written testimony offering comments. We also believe that the measure in its current form is premature, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. We also have the Office of Enterprise Technology Services and Support. We have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. Okay, thank you for standing on your testimony, Director, offering comments. Next, we have the Disability and Communications Access Board in support. Kirby Shaw. Okay. We have the Hawaii State Council on Mental Health in support. Common Cause Hawaii in support. We also have Waihou offering comments. We have the CTIA in opposition. Charter Communications offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Rebecca Lieberman. I'm here on behalf of Charter Communications. We stand on our written testimony providing comments on this bill and are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. We also have Janine Suki with Hawaiian Telecom offering comments.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on this bill. We are standing on our testimony, and we do have some concerns regarding the overly broad language on page 12, section 10-2 that grants the State Broadband Authority powers to regulate and oversee broadband infrastructure. Should this bill continue to move forward, we ask for the committee's consideration to strike that language. Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments.
Thank you very much, Janine. We also have Garrett Yoshimi with the University of Hawaii offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Garrett Yoshimi with the University of Hawaii, also representing the state's broadband interests. We'll stand on our written testimony. I'd also like to note, as several of the other testifiers have noted, some concerns about some of the language related to the Broadband Authority. We have been working with a number of stakeholders across the state to provide some, or to craft some alternative language as to how the discussions could proceed without actually forming the authority, but actually in the form of a working group. We're happy to provide those comments to the committee if we can be helpful.
Thank you very much, Garrett. We also have Kathy Putt with Crown Castle offering comments. And we have late testimony from the Department of Transportation offering comments. Not here. Okay. And Hawaii Broadband Hawaii, David Miyashiro in support. Not here. Members, please note that's the extent of testifiers who have provided testimony thus far. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2076? Okay, seeing no further testifiers on the measure, members, any questions? Seeing no questions, and we'll move on to our next agenda item. SB 2385 SD2 HD1 relating to procurement. This would allow a purchasing agency to submit a request for alternative procurement approval from the Chief Procurement Officer or Chief Procurement Officer's designee if fewer than 3 qualified persons respond to a solicitation. On SB 2385, we have Department of Accounting and General Services in support. Oh, sorry. Okay. Thank you very much, Dags, for standing on your testimony in support. Next, we have the State Procurement Office in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Monica Hakui, Acting Administrator for the State Procurement Office. We stand on our written testimony and providing amendments to the bill and available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. We also have Andrew Kawano with the City and County of Honolulu in support. We have Reiko Matsuyama with the County of Kauai in support. We have Reed Mizue with the American Institute of Architects, Hawaii State Council in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Reed Mizue here with American Institute of Architects, AIA Hawaii. We stand on our written testimony in strong opposition to the current language in the HD1 bill. We also wanted to point out that we have provided revised suggested language to HD1. So we urge the committee to take a look at that. And that we also want to point out that, with our suggested language changes, that we do seek to help our state agencies with this less than 3 RFQ issue that they have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Reed. We also have Derek Mukai, Community Planning and Engineering, Inc. in opposition. Jamie Ho with the University of Hawaii in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Jamie Ho, and I'm representing Ms. Govea, who apologizes for not being able to attend today. The university stands on our written testimony in support of this bill.
Thank you very much. We also have Beverly Shii Nakayama in opposition. Kyle Kaneshiro in opposition. Sean Sugai in opposition. Kaika Kincaid in opposition. Jeffrey Kalani. Oh, I'm sorry, is Ikaika Kincaid here? Okay, sorry, Ikaika.
Oh, yeah, no problem. Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members. Yeah, Ikaika Kincaid. I'm actually here testifying on behalf of American Council of Engineering Companies of Hawaii. In addition to our submitted opposition testimony, we'd like to point out that HRS 103D 304, it's very important because it protects public health and safety and the taxpayers' interest. Government agencies supporting the bill have been they've been able to provide 1 or 2 examples of situations where the law in its current form is problematic, and some of the language that's been proposed, ACECH, we have been working with HDOT, and we continue to work with them to provide language that we believe would respond to the agency needs. But we also want to make sure and require that the reporting is transparent, and there is transparency that actually is really needed to safeguard the intent of our qualification-based QBS law. Even with the current safeguards in place, we're still having to deal with corruption in our communities, which is currently going on, which is why it is so important to maintain QBS. Now, the proposed language in this version, SB 2385 SD2 HD1, it provides a potential for loopholes in the QBS law that could be exploited to skirt, good procurement practices. And changing the law should be done carefully and with negotiations by all stakeholders. Therefore, we are requesting a working group be established to work on language that could be adopted, next session, and request that ACECH have a representative or be included in the working group since we represent 70 engineering firms with over 1,500 employees in the state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kincaid. We also have Jeffrey Kalani in opposition. Not here. Cheryl Nojima in opposition. Sandy Wong in opposition.
I'm here, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair. My name is Sandy Wong. I would echo the concerns of the American Council of Engineering Companies. As you know, I serve as their lobbyist. The engineers worked really hard to get QBS into Hawaii law. One, for the safety of our residents, and two, to try to do safeguards so there wasn't corruption. We were only advised of this bill at the beginning of the session, and although we've been working with other stakeholders, we have just not been able to reach agreement on language that is amenable to all the stakeholders. I think even the state among their entities can't even agree on language. So we would strongly suggest, because this is an important issue, that we do a task force, and so that during the off session, all of the stakeholders can get together, really have the time to vet really good language, and the next session come in with a bill that everyone is comfortable with. We have heard from the state. They said there is 1 or 2 cases where they can't get 3 qualified firms, but these are 1 and 2 cases. So I don't think 1 or 2 cases qualify to basically erode QBS law, because the language now proposed by the HD1 and the SD2 just has too many loopholes. So we would request that you either hold this bill or that you amend this bill so that we can have a task force and that all stakeholders can fully vet this change. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. We also have Daniel Chun in opposition. Not here. We have late testimony from the Department of Transportation offering comments. Late testimony from Janice Marsters in opposition.
Chair.
Hi, Janice.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. Echo the comments made by Ikaika and Sandy, and I just one other point or a few points I'll make. I'll be telling my age by saying I was involved in the passage of this legislation 25 years ago that created 103D 304. And, that law has stood for a long time, and it's withstood, in fact, some rulemaking that was attempted to address this issue that was later struck down by the Supreme Court. We're certainly, I think our industry is certainly willing to work with the state, but we do want to be careful. We have queried state and county agencies and find, as Sandy noted, that there aren't that many cases. And in fact, one of the things we heard that most of the cases aren't related to design professionals, they're related to other professional services. And if you look at 103D 304, other professional services are allowed to be procured already by other means, such as sole source or other means. It's really the protection for critical design professional services that we're interested in protecting. And, it's obvious that the legislature, in its wisdom at that time, created special conditions for design professionals to safeguard, as we said, public health and safety and just taxpayer interest. So agree with the idea that we just need a little more time to make sure that we're doing the right thing here in whatever language change we made. So working group or task force would be, I think, the way to go now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Janice. We also have Barbara Schadeller in opposition and Kevin Gooding in opposition. Okay, that's the extent of our proffered testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2385? Okay, seeing no further testifiers on SB 2385, members, any questions? Representative Clark.
May I have Ms. Kahukui, please? SPO. Good afternoon, Director. Thank you for being here and thank you for your testimony. So you have heard the numerous testimonies in opposition with respect to the QBS as well as the contention from the design professionals. I want to take a step back first. I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the Asato versus Procurement Policy Board ruling by the Hawaii Supreme Court. So do you mind just for my edification, just educating me on what exactly that ruling was? Obviously they struck the law down, but what was the basis?
Basically, it said the Supreme Court said you had to have a minimum of 3. You could not have 2 for whatever reason. It's just that from now on, whenever you do use a professional services method of procurement, you're required to have 3 respondents.
Okay,
and that's
so
the
then,
basis of this problem.
so then how would this bill then, I mean, so essentially what we're just doing is exempting the requirement of 3. And in other words, we're flying in the face of the Hawaii Supreme Court and we're saying it's okay, we're going to give an exemption if there's less than 3.
The agencies would have to come in after they've done their due diligence, putting out a notice, and when they do not get 3, and they could have put it out multiple times, if they still did not get 3, then they would come in to their chief procurement officer with a request for exemption, explaining what they've done and why this exemption is necessary.
Okay, so you've heard the testimony in opposition, and essentially, you know, there's allegations of that this particular law would essentially further pay to play. It could potentially, sorry, one of the testifiers, I think, testified that there was very isolated incidents where you didn't actually have 3 qualified firms applying. So could you just address those issues?
Yes, that's correct. We're not trying to water down the qualified based requirements here. It's only in those situations when they don't get 3. So if the architects and engineers always get 3 responses, then it'll never be an issue for them. It's for those cases, those professions, when they don't get 3, it could be a very niche market that has very few people in that category, so they won't get 3. And that's where the agencies were now having to tell them, well, broaden your scope until it's basically a watered down version of the original notice, just so they can say they got 3 proposals, whether or not those 3 really fit the requirements.
Are these isolated incidents though, where you actually have less than 3 qualified firms applied?
It's not uncommon. I mean, it doesn't happen. Yes, it doesn't happen often, but it does happen from time to time. And again, agencies are stuck. They can't move
but
forward.
It's not but it's not common though.
Okay, so if they choose to, they can choose to use another method of procurement. And I think some agencies are now getting wiser to that. They can use the IFB, RFP method of procurement just so that they avoid not getting the 3 quotes. So in that aspect, then you are going away from the qualified base requirements. So, you know, where do you want to be now?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kahukui. Thank you, Jeff.
I have
Representative Morikawa.
clarification to SPO.
Yes.
Say for the island of Kauai, where they cannot get 3 bidders because perhaps the bidders are from another island. Can't they just say that they tried and maybe that 3rd person did not want to bid?
Currently, the way the statute reads, and with the Asato case, they cannot. They have to just keep going out again, release the solicitation again until they can get 3 bids, if they're using the professional services method of procurement.
Got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any additional questions? Representative Onishi.
Yeah, for state procurement.
Yes.
So I now have a concern that departments or agencies could put together their proposal. So it's really a specialty or a new thought or method that would be required in order for the vendors to, or the proposals to qualify. So, it would seem like, if it's not really sort of mainstream or that it's an accepted practice or technology or something like that, that you would have problems with qualifying bidders or proposals. So how do we ensure that the departments or agencies are not using this to restrict potential competition and only to attract certain companies or entities from this, from providing proposals?
In the professional services method of procurement, they have to identify the professions. And there is a list of professions under 464 or those under the Hawaii revised statute and the Office of the Federal Office of Management, OMB, Management Personnel. And those, they identify that by category, and categories could be engineers, it could be psychologists, doctors, dentists, those kinds of things. They cannot make up their own categories. It's already set. And so what they're asking for in their qualifications is, do you qualify as a blank psychologist? And if you go to the statute, these are the requirements you have to meet to become a psychologist. Or if you go into the federal site, these are the requirements you have to establish before you're considered a psychologist. So those are your qualifications. The next step is then identifying a specific job that's associated with that notice. It's not necessarily—
Right, and that's where my concern comes in. So you could say psychologist, but then the request is only for a certain, or say a new specialty that, would preclude other people from being able to qualify.
Okay, so what I'm believing is the specialties that are listed normally don't go down to the subspecialties. It's psychologists. And then they call out for fiscal year 2023, we're going to need so many of these psychologists, and you submit your qualifications. Now, if they do need a specialty psychologist, whatever that might be, then they would rank the top 3 first and put out, this is what they are looking for. This is the task that they're looking for, and rank them from there. So I don't think we're looking at a subspecialty in the initial notification.
Okay, so my final question, Chair. Would you be opposed to the establishment of a task force to officially come up with a recommendation on how to address this?
I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm just not sure what we would be trying to accomplish if we're trying to carve out, certain specialties that would be, this law would not apply to.
Well, I think that's the concern, right? That this is a general carve out. And, the departments and agencies may potentially abuse it. So that's, I guess, why the idea of a task force is to identify specifically what are the problems and how it should be addressed.
So the State Procurement Office proposed different language than an alternative. We proposed a request for an exemption, which would make it more transparent to the architects and engineers. So when you do a request for exemption, it comes into the Chief Procurement Office. We're required to post the notice for a minimum of 7 days. So it goes out to the general public or whomever would like to see this. And they can then turn around and say, that's not right. There's some issue with that before the Chief Procurement Officer can make an affirmative decision. The way the bill is currently written, which is an alternative procurement, yes, I can see where that would be an issue because there is no transparency into that. But we're proposing an alternate language, which is the exemption method, which is already an established method for non-professional services procurement.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any additional questions on SB 2385? Okay, seeing no further questions, thank you for the great discussion on SB 2385. We'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 3040, also relating to procurement. And this establishes a state procurement automation system special fund. It also authorizes the state procurement administrator to develop and administer procurement automation systems and assess, change, and collect a small transaction fee from vendors using the procurement automation system. On SB 3040, we have the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, Daintree Bartola.
Thank you, Chair. We stand on testimony and strong support.
Thank you for standing on your testimony and strong support, State Council on Developmental Disabilities. We also have the State Procurement Office in support.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. The State Procurement Office stands on its testimony and strong support.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. We also have Tax Foundation of Hawaii offering comments.
Thank you, Chair, members. Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We are very concerned that what is happening here is a new tax on state procurements. We don't think it's warranted, and we have concerns about it. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Tom. We also have Lisa Maruyama with the Hawaii Alliance of Nonprofit Organizations in opposition. Not here. And we have late testimony from the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. Okay, thank you, Director of BNF, for standing on your testimony, offering comments. And we also have the Department of Transportation in support, but not here. Members, please note that's the extent of our proper testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3040? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item from the Government Reform Committee, SB 3369, SD2, HD1 relating to procurement. This establishes a procurement services consolidation working group, which shall develop a plan for the phased-in consolidation under the State Procurement Office of all state executive branch procurement services and staff within 5 years, except those of the Hawaii Health Systems Corporation, UH, the Office of Hawaii, and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs. It requires the working group to recommend ways to attract high-quality procurement professionals to the state, as well as making an appropriation. On SB 3369, we have our first testifier, the State Procurement Office, offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Bonnie Kahakui again. We stand on our written testimony, providing comments and request the Department of Education be removed from this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. We also have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. Okay, thank you, Director, for standing on your comments on SB 3369. Members, that's the extent of our proper testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3369? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our last procurement item from the GVR committee, SB 3372 SD1 HD1, also relating to public procurement, and this authorizes where it's determined that a solicitation or award of a contract is in violation of the law, the government contract to be rescinded and awarded to the next lowest responsible bidder to whom the contract would have been awarded were it not for the violation of law, as applicable or as directed by the Office of Administrative Hearings. On SB 3372, we have the Department of Accounting and General Services. Thank you very much, Dags, for standing on your testimony in support. We also have the State Procurement Office offering comments.
Good afternoon. The State Procurement Office stands on its written testimony in support and proposes amendments to the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. Members, that's the extent of our testimony on SB 3372. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on the measure? Okay. Seeing no further testifiers on SB 3372, then we will move on to our next agenda item, our section coming from the Labor and Tourism Committee. SB 2644 relating to electrical contractors. This would extend for a period of 10 years the high voltage transmission line worker electrical contractor licensure exemption, in addition to including reporting requirements. On SB 2644, we have the Board of Electricians and Plumbers in opposition.
Hello, Chair and Vice Chair. My name is Philip Lucero. I'm the chairperson of the Board of Electricians and Plumbers. The board opposes this bill. We find it too broad and we need more detailed description of the type of work and the area they are working. Currently, there are licensed contractors with C62 and 63. Currently have EJ workers with the certifications to do high voltage work. Holding the EJ license at least holds the base foundation of doing electrical work in Hawaii. Any voltage high or over 50, we know is dangerous. And we would strongly oppose this bill because it is too overly broad on the type of work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have the Contractors License Board in opposition. Candice, Ito. Contractors License Board in opposition. Okay, come back. We have IBW Local Union 1186 in opposition. We also have Hawaiian Electric in support.
Hey, good afternoon. Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. My name is Mike Swanson. I'm the Transmission and Distribution Director at Hawaiian Electric. Hawaiian Electric is in strong support of Senate Bill 2644. We must have access to out-of-state journeyman line workers, cable splicers, and substation electricians to support our electric grid that, quite frankly, are not available in Hawaii. Resources from the mainland do come at a greater cost. More often than not, we have to pay subsistence, housing, meals, in addition to additional overtime. So it's within our best interest to hire local, and that's what we want to do. If there are licensed electricians in the state that can perform this work, they need to sign the books at an IBW local. Hawaiian Electric is a union shop. This law has been on the books for 9 years, and in those 9 years, when calls are made to the union halls, no one responds as qualified to do such work. Finally, the company prefers to hire a local labor force and open to finding ways to address consistent work availability that could make it is truly specialized training to do high voltage work, and it can't be work that's just touched on as it is with an EJ electrician's license. Climbing poles, working on energized conductors, using rubber glove and live line work methods, splicing lead and poly cable, being transported by a helicopter 150 foot below the helicopter and being dropped off on an energized transmission tower. These are just a few examples of the training that's required from our licensed contractors to do this work. And quite frankly, an EJ license isn't going to do it. As you may know, high voltage work is one of the top 10 most hazardous jobs in the world. And those that do make mistakes with high voltage most often do not survive. Again, we strive to keep this work internal. That's what we want to do. We want to work to build a bench. However, that's a significant challenge, because if we build a bench and we only have a couple months worth of work, these workers that are going to be trained locally are going to go to the mainland where work is readily available. You can go to any utility website on the West Coast,
Michael,
and all of
them.
them.
If you can start to summarize,
Yep.
please. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. All of them are advertising for linemen. I have done a little research, and I cannot find anywhere in North America where state electrician's license is needed for high voltage work at a utility by a licensed contractor. Proof is usually provided, their journeyman status is provided by local IBWs. And with that, I'll be available for questions, should there be any, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Michael. We also have late testimony from IBW Local 1260 in support, and we have the Land Use Research Foundation of Hawaii in support, but also not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2644? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, I just have a few, if the members will permit me, for Hawaiian Electric. Mr. Swanson?
Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. I think this is now the only vehicle alive for this, so this is probably a germane discussion to have, and we continue as legislators to hear there is enough of a work supply, there isn't enough, and that can be difficult for us as a body to determine, given the specialized nature of this craft. But I guess what I'd like to ask is a few quick questions. One, you've had this exemption now for almost a decade, nine out of the 10 years. How often, if ever, have you used this exemption to hire people for this kind of work?
So it depends on the year. I can tell you, I've been here almost 2 years now, and we are using significantly less contractors than years prior. But basically, in 2018, there were 20 projects where we used this exemption. 2019, I believe there was 14 projects. Last year there was 18, and this year we're only slated, or I'm sorry, last year, 2021, there was only 9. Okay. This year, there may be just a handful, if any. Okay. With that said, we do have challenges on Maui where we're trying to hire journeyman linemen, and there are no local applicants.
Okay, thank you. That's a helpful clarification. And then on the outreach, right, where some of the electricians, organizations, and bodies will say that there's plenty of people. What does HECO do to either advertise these positions or to reach out to the unions to potentially utilize local talent, if anything?
Yeah, so we are a local shop, and we are a union shop. I'm sorry, we are a union shop, and we do require our contractors to go through an IBEW local, either 1186 or 1260. If there's anyone on the books, they have to be dispatched per union laws, the way I understand it anyway, that they have to be dispatched in accordance to where they land on the books. And like I stated in my testimony, there's nobody on the books at 1260 right now. I just verified that before this meeting started.
Thank you. And then lastly, why not just, this is more a lay question, but why not just grow your own pipeline? I mean, why not just have HECO employees? I mean, why is this exemption necessary?
I apologize. That's exactly what we're trying to do. We're currently growing our workforce. I gave the example of Maui. We're trying to grow our workforce to do the work locally. It takes 3 years to be a journeyman lineman, as an example, as well as a substation electrician. I'm in the process of hiring 25 local residents, starting at the beginning level classification of senior helper, because there are no journeymen available. So we are growing our own. That's 25 new positions here in the state of Hawaii. So we're working that direction. It's just going to take us some time.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our next agenda item. SB 3126, and this is relating to the boiler and elevator safety law. And this requires the director of DLIR to appoint a chief boiler and pressure vessel inspector. It allows the director of labor and industrial relations to authorize qualified boiler inspectors who are in the exclusive employment of an owner user inspection organization to perform safety inspections of pressure retaining items. It extends the time by which the director is required to reimburse the general fund for the initial appropriation made to the boiler and elevator revolving fund from 10 to 13 years from the date that the fund was established. On SB 3126, we have the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. My name is Ann Eustachio, Director, Department of Labor. Thank you, Chair Johansson, for hearing this very important administrative bill. I am testifying in strong support of the measure as it allows an additional type of pressure vessel retaining item inspection, which will augment the ability of the department to inspect and assure the safe operation and use of boilers, pressure vessels, and pressure systems in Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. We also have Hawaiian Electric in support.
Aloha, Chairman, Vice Chairman, committee members. My name is Ken Hutchings, Senior Boiler Engineer for Hawaiian Electric, also a National Board Commissioned Boiler and Pressure Vessel Inspector, and authorized by the state of Hawaii as a Boiler Inspector and Pressure Vessel Inspector. Standing in for Simon Powell, our Supervisor of Technical Services, who could not be here today. We stand by the written testimony provided by Mr. Powell as written, and I have some additional comments, basically regarding the appropriateness of doing in-house inspections. I've heard there's some concerns about that. Maybe the appropriateness of an owner-user inspection. Owner users and inspectors are accredited by the National Board to the same education and experience standards as the authorized inspection agencies and their inspectors. Many other industries also have similar inspection allowances. For example, FAA under Code of Federal Regulation allows airline companies to inspect and certify airplanes and return them to service. Basically, just because we have a police officer in the family doesn't mean we can speed. There's other benefits for owner user versus an authorized inspection agency. Owner users can provide a better, safer inspection product than either AIAs or possibly jurisdiction. Permanent inspections are only required at a certain periodicity by state laws and rules. For example, boiler externals every 6 months and internals every 3 years. AIA inspections and jurisdictional inspectors, they schedule ahead of time and can only perform a snapshot inspection of the pressure retaining item. To paraphrase the original quote, even a broken clock is right twice a day. You can only do the best you can with what you see at that time. Owner user inspectors, however, in contrast, are often in the plants, and when they're always looking for safety issues with the equipment. So an owner user inspector is more likely to find a safety issue sooner than an AIA inspector who comes in maybe every 6 months. I have a personal saying, code is like integrity. It's what you do even when no one's inspecting. There's also a matter of precedence. 34 of 49 states either explicitly allow owner user inspections or exempt electric generation plants and refineries from state boiler law. That exemption is the South Dakota. Last year.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was
Yes,
just
sir.
going to say, if you can start to summarize your testimony, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
Not a problem. Last point I have is in 2022, there's 123 national board accredited inspection agencies and organizations. Of that 123, 45 are national board AIAs, and 78 of them are owner users. So the ratio is about 7-4 between OUIOs and AIAs. There's more of our organization than there's of the insurance companies. Generally used for larger companies. Nobody is going to invest in a program like ours unless they have a really, really good business case, because it takes a lot of time and money and highly trained personnel to do this. And I stand by. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. And if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. We also have Car Hawaii in support, but not present. That's the extent of our proper testimony on SB 3126. Members, any questions? I'm sorry, is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 3126? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next labor agenda item, SB 3128, SD2, relating to the Adequate Reserve Fund. This amends the definition of the Adequate Reserve Fund for calendar years 2023 through 2030 to exclude the benefit cost rate from June 2020 through August 2021. Members, please note we did pass a substantially similar bill, which was HB 2471 out of this committee earlier this year. On SB 3128, we have the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations.
Again, good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. Ann Eustachio, Director, Department of Labor. Thank you again, Chair, for hearing this administrative bill. I am testifying in strong support of the measure that addresses the anomalous outflow from the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund during the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic by providing relief to contributory employers. This relief will allow contributory employers to replenish the Unemployment Contribution Trust Fund and help reestablish the fund's integrity without facing the highest contribution schedules for years as Hawaii's economy continues to recover. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. We also have Tax Foundation of Hawaii offering comments.
Thank you, Chair, members. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We've submitted written comments and we'll stand on those. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Tom. We also have Pamela Tumpop from the Maui Chamber of Commerce in support. And we have Lauren Zerbel from the Hawaii Food Industry Association in support.
Thank you very much, Chair. We'll stand on our written testimony in support. Hello.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lauren. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 3128? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on SB 3128? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to SB 3129 SD1 relating to the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund. This appropriates funds into the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund. Department of Labor and Industrial Relations. You and Iris can have a competition for who's got more steps in today.
Good afternoon again, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. Ann Eustachio, Director, Department of Labor. Thank you again, Chair, for hearing this administrative bill and testifying in support of this measure, which provides an appropriation to the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund and allows the DLIR to expend it to infuse cash into the fund and make benefit payments to eligible claimants. However, the department notes that the infusion of funds into the UCTF does not create an ongoing effect on reducing employers' tax rates beyond 1 year. Again, thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. On 3129, we also have Retail Merchants of Hawaii in support. Not here. Parents and Children Together offering comments, Ryan Kusumoto. We have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. Okay, thank you very much, Director of Budget and Finance, for standing on your written comments. And we also have late testimony from the Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Thank you, Chair. We will stand on our testimony and strong support. Mahalo.
Okay, thank you very much, Lauren. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3129? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Also note that this is substantially similar to a measure we passed, HB 1852. Any questions on SB 3129? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item and last, oh no, not last. Next agenda item, SB 3142 SD1 relating to workers' compensation law. And this amends the workers' compensation law to add reserve public safety law enforcement officers. And further amends it to add a list of volunteer occupations covered under the workers' compensation law, in addition to some other changes. On SB 3142, we have the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee. Stand on our written testimony and are available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. Okay, thank you, Director, for standing on your comments. We also have the Department of Health Executive Office on, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm sorry, I've skipped. I meant by Department of Public Safety and the Executive Office on Aging, I meant the Department, and I'm sorry, Department of Public Safety, Max Otani in support. Not here, it's just skipping ahead. I'm so eager to get to the Hawaii Saves program, I guess. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3142? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we will move on now to SB 3289 relating to the Hawaii Retirement Savings Program. And it establishes the Hawaii Retirement Savings Program administered by the Retirement Savings Board in consultation with DLIR and the Department of Budget and Finance to provide a state facilitated payroll deduction and individual access to employer-sponsored retirement savings plans beginning on an implementation date to be determined. It requires the implementation and evaluation study followed by a strategy and timetable prior to implementation. On SB 3289, we have the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. Ann Eustachio, Director, Department of Labor. I am testifying in support of the intent of this measure, which establishes the Hawaii Retirement Savings Program. The Hawaii Retirement Savings Task Force determined that establishing a Hawaii Retirement Savings Program would provide an option to workers that currently do not have access to an employer-sponsored retirement plan. This would help enable workers to save enough to retire with financial security at an earlier age. However, the department suggests that it may not be the appropriate executive branch placement for this function. The department does not have subject matter expertise to oversee the implementation and administration of a payroll deduction retirement savings program. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Director. Now we have the Department of Budget and Finance. Thanks, Director.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa. I'm Craig Uri, Director of Finance. By way of explanation, I think this was the only item that we intended to testify on in person. I think the others were supposed to be written only. Department stands on its written testimony with comments. We have no objection to the bill, and we are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. We also have the Department of Health Executive Office on Aging, Caroline Kadirao, offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. My name is Caroline Kadirao, Director of the Executive Office on Aging. We too we support the intent of Senate Bill 3289 that would help to establish a retirement savings for those so that they can live with peace of mind in their retirement years. Some of us are fortunate enough to have an employer that helps to invest in a retirement savings program, such as state employees do. We ask for consideration for the automatic enrollment to be considered because that's been proven to increase participation and has been a best strategy that we've seen that we'd like consideration to be for this retirement savings program. We do defer to budget and finance regarding implementation of the program, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. We also have the Department of Human Services and Support. Here, Common Cause Hawaii offering comments. Not here. Hawaii Primary Care Association in support. Hawaii, oh, there we go.
Sorry about that. Hi, Eric Abe for the Hawaii Primary Care Association. We strongly support this measure and we'll stand on our written testimony. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. We also have the Tax Foundation of Hawaii offering comments.
Thank you, Chair and members. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We have some concerns about the dirty details, like if the Department of Labor doesn't want it, for example, where is it going to wind up? We just basically have some comments on the idea, and we will send a written testimony. So providing, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Tom. We also have Gary Simon with the Policy Advisory Board for Elder Affairs in support.
Thank you, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. I'm Gary Simon, Chair of the State's Policy Advisory Board for Elder Affairs, more commonly known by its acronym, PABIA. PABIA is strongly in support of the bill. I just want to iterate two facts. You're going to hear this program isn't needed or shouldn't be considered. First, you will hear that more financial education will solve the undersaving problem. It will not. It does not change access and ease of use, which are the two primary factors that do change whether people save. Financial education on its own has not been shown to improve savings. Second, you will hear that employers will drop their 401k plans in favor of the state's retirement program. This is not true. In fact, in states with auto IRA programs, more employers offer plans than were offering them before. And data shows that when given the choice of facilitating a state program or starting a plan, a measurable number of employers will take the opportunity to start the plans they've been thinking about starting. We urge you to support the bill. Thank you for the privilege to testify.
Thank you very much, Gary. We also have Betty Lou Larson with Catholic Charities of Hawaii in support. We have ARP, Kaylee E. Lopez in support.
Aloha Chair Johansson and Vice Chair Kitagawa and members of the Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee. We too were eager to have you to get to this agenda item, so thank you very much. Really just appreciate the fact that this bill is in front of this body for consideration, and we urge you to push it out. We are in strong support of this measure. We do believe that making retirement savings available to over 200,000 private sector workers is really in the best interest of Hawaii, those members and their families, and future taxpayers. So the fact that this bill has come this far is very exciting. We realize there are several hurdles to overcome. One of the things you may hear in testimony, is that Alice families will lose benefits as they accumulate savings in the program. This is not true. Generally speaking, retirement saving assets are exempt from and not included in asset tests for these programs such as SNAP and others. In fact, Alice families that with savings in this program will have access to savings for in cases of emergency and protection from creditors in certain situations. The other thing you might hear is that the current programs are failing. I'm not sure where that's coming from, but to date, 450,000 savers have accumulated $450 million in assets saved. That's at about a rate of $100 a month. The programs where they've been offered are well received, operating efficiently, and taking in new savers daily. Lastly, one of the things I think is important, you'll hear that this program is costly for the state to offer. We believe that not taking action is far more costly. In Hawaii, the cost of doing nothing is estimated to be $1.72 billion over 20 years. For less than 1% of this cost, we can provide a retirement savings program that helps those who are uncovered in the workforce to put funds aside for retirement, again, for the benefit of themselves, their families, and Hawaii. Thank you so much for letting me testify. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Kili. We also have Warren Chikamoto, American Council of Life Insurers in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Warren Chikamoto. I represent the American Council of Life Insurers, ACLI. And as you have noticed and read in my testimony, ACLI opposes this bill. I set forth in my testimony the reasons why ACLI opposes. Simply that the premise of the program at its core assumes that employers, small employers, and its employees do not have access to available, affordable retirement plans. You know as well as I do that you can walk to the Bank of Hawaii and open up a 401k plan, which is exactly the retirement savings vehicle proposed in this bill. But it involves, in this particular case, basically three other parties. The Department of Labor and Industrial Relations, you got the employer involved, and the main body here that is actually administering the plan is the Savings Board. All of these players in this act have absolutely no liability for the decisions and things that they do, presumably to achieve savings and looking after the benefit and interest of its employee, of the participants. And so that's, I think, a significant factor to consider in viewing this bill. It does say, however, that making it an opt-in plan as opposed to auto opt-out, I mean, not automatically coming in, but then giving the people the opportunity to opt out. What it does is that it does, in fact, give an opportunity and a requirement for the board to tell the participants the consequences of opting in. But you'll notice by taking a close look at this bill, it doesn't come out and specifically say, hey, you got to provide this education and advise the participant of the consequences before he enrolls. The other thing I just want to add real quickly is at the tail end of this thing, once it's up and running after the first year, the board is required to give its report in terms of the feasibility of the implementation. we think that one of the things that the board should have is the opportunity to recommend to the legislature to not continue the plan if it's not feasible. Thank you.
Thank you, Oren. We also have Cynthia Takinaka, NIFA Hawaii, in opposition. Not here. Beth Geesting in support. Also have individual testimony from Linda Dorset in support. Gerard Silva in opposition. Carl Takamura in support. Audrey Suga Nakagawa in support. Thank you, Audrey, for standing on your testimony in support. We also have Esther Ueda in support. We have Chalantoran Burian in support. Kathy Jaycox in support. Natalie Iwasa in opposition. Barbara Franklin in support. Anna Filler in support. Carol Wakayama in support. Barbara Krieg in support.
Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee. My name is Barbara Krieg, and I thank you for the opportunity to be here today to testify in support of the establishment of the Hawaii Retirement Savings Program. I have submitted relatively detailed written testimony. I certainly won't repeat that here. I will, however, summarize that all workers deserve to have a payroll-based retirement program opportunity. And the reason for that is that it has been proven that those are the most successful types of programs, whether you're the public employee in the ERS system, whether you are an employee of usually large employers here with the 401k plans or other types of retirement savings. We still have a gap of about 200,000 people who have no opportunity to have a payroll-based retirement program. And that's why this bill is so important. There are certainly avenues for individuals to sign up for retirement savings programs. But the fact of the matter is that that just doesn't happen. It's not as easy as having money taken out of your paycheck, whether you've opted into the program or, as I personally would prefer to see, an auto enrollment program. The whole point is the easier the access, the more participants we will have and a higher amount of retirement savings will be seen within the state. I do, however, respectfully request that the committee consider returning to the original language in which the program is an auto-enrolled program, where the default is that for every employee of a participating employer, they're automatically enrolled, and then they have the opportunity to opt out if they decide for whatever reason they choose not to do so. In similar programs that are already in operation in 3 states, the experience has been that about 30% of employees do opt out after being first in the program, but that's still significantly, at least a significantly higher percentage of employees still saving for retirement than in the voluntary programs. I also would sort of like to just remind you that there's more detail in my written testimony, but the model that this is proposing, a board of trustees with a privately contracted administrator and privately contracted financial advisor, is proven to be successful already in the form of the state's deferred compensation program that was set up under, I think, Chapter 88E. So there is experience. That is not a structure that leaves participants without recourse. So there's recourse under the law, there's recourse in terms of a fiduciary responsibility. And again, it's detailed a little more in my written testimony. But this is not something that is irresponsible in any way. And I do believe that it is in fact a program that is necessary and important. And I do ask your consideration for passing the bill through and in the form of an auto-enroll opt-out program. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Barbara. So nice to see you again. We have late testimony from the Hawaiian Community Assets and Hawaii Community Lending in support. Not here. Late testimony from HGA in support. Late testimony from the Hawaii Public Health Institute in support. Late testimony from the Maui Chamber of Commerce in support. Late testimony from Retail Merchants of Hawaii offering comment. Not here. Honolulu Information Services, Inc. in support. And we also have late individual testimony from Barbara Service in support. Okay, but not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3289? Okay. Seeing no further testifiers then on SB 3289, we'll move on to our question and answer period. Members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we will move on to, that was the last the labor agenda item. We'll move on to our Health and Human Services and Homelessness section. Next, we're on SB 2032, SD2HD1 relating to genetic information. This establishes the Hawaii Genetic Information Privacy Act, which would require direct-to-consumer genetic testing companies to adhere to certain requirements pertaining to the collection, use, and disclosure of genetic data. It also deems any violation an unfair and deceptive trade practice. On SB 2032, we have DCCA, Office of Consumer Protection, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Raji Tolentino standing on behalf of Steve Evans. The Office of Consumer Protection stands in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have the Coalition for Genetic Data Protection in opposition. William Gu.
The coalition candidate
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gu, standing on your testimony with support except opposing the penalties provision. We also have opposition testimony from Gerard Silva and late testimony from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs in support, but not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2032? Okay, seeing no further testifiers on SB 2032. Members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we will move on to our next agenda item, SB 2276, SD2HD1 relating to acupuncture. Members, please note this is substantially similar to HB 1679, which we passed out earlier this session. On SB 2276, this would be a comprehensive update to the acupuncture statutes after having gone 20 years without updates to remove and update outdated language, as well as add in some additional requirements to increase professionalism and safety within the field. On SB 2276, we have Integrated Medicine Oahu in support, James Chiyama. Not here. We have the Hawaii Acupuncture Association in support.
Hi, good afternoon, Honorable Chair Johansson and Vice Chair Kitagawa. I'm Dr. Barbara Ota and want to say hello to the committee. I'm president of the Hawaii Acupuncture Association, and I stand by our testimony in support of this bill. Just want to quickly say that it's been a 4-year process, and in our due diligence included looking at other state statutes, working with our national organizations on statute development, and discussing the issues with all of our Hawaii stakeholders. We gave ample opportunity for input and collaboration by all. We shared the draft of the intended bill with everyone and received direct responses from all except for the Hawaii Medical Association. To provide for Hawaii's current, future, and medical and social needs, statutory updates must accurately reflect the standards and practices for our industry. So we ask for your support for SB 2276, ensuring that this profession provides educated and safe healthcare delivery for the citizens of Hawaii.
Thank you, Dr. Ota.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We also have Rubin Enterprises, LLC in support, AcuPlan Hawaii in support, Amy Norton in support. Institute of Clinical Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine in support.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Johansson and Vice Chair Kitagawa. My name is Dr. Waihou, President and CEO of the Institute of Clinical Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. We stand by our testimony in support of this bill. However, I want to further expand that our studies in traditional Chinese medicine and acupuncture, we do have internal medicine, though we are not competing with the 8,000 hours of Western internal medicine specialty. We also have advanced diagnostics specialties and therapeutic based on evidence-based research. We are upgrading our statute to inform the public that our profession is far advanced and that is currently written in the statute. Furthermore, the question of repealing 3.5 is in a discussion that has already been settled by the AG opinion number 03-5 dated August 18, 2003 that is attached to my testimony. Thank you for the opportunity to testify on this measure, and I'm available to have questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lowe. We also have the Longevity Health Center in support. AAAC, Marilyn Allen in support. Pain Free Kauai in support. American Academy of Medical Acupuncture in opposition. Ocean Med Integrative Health Clinic in support. Kailua Acupuncture Clinic in support. Longevity Health Center, Dr. Tice in support. Not here. Malama Ikaola Holistic Health Center in support. I'm sorry, and I should have called you earlier. The Board of Acupuncture, Rise Doi. My apologies, Rise.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Rise Doi, Executive Officer for the Board of Acupuncture, and will stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rise. We also have the Hawaii Medical Association in opposition. We have numerous other individuals offering support, comments, or opposition on this measure, but not indicating that they would be present to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2276? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2375 SD1 HD1 relating to social work. This requires the Department of Public Safety in collaboration with the Department of Human Services to develop and establish a social work training program to assist incarcerated nonviolent individuals in the area of social work. It requires progress reports on the program to the legislature. On SB 2375, we have the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs, Professional Vocational Licensing Division, Rochelle Araki, offering comments.
Chair. Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. My name is Rochelle Araki. I'm the Executive Officer for the Social Worker Licensing Program. On behalf of the department, I will stand on our written comments. While the department appreciates the intent of this measure, we would like to ensure that any individual exploring a professional pathway in the practice of social work also comply with HRS Chapter 467E. Any person engaged in the practice of social work, unless specifically exempted from licensure pursuant to HRS Section 467E-6, is subject to licensure by the program. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in this bill.
Thank you very much. We also have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments, Department of Human Services offering comments, Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition in support, Community Alliance on Prisons in support. I did see Kat Brady earlier. In support, Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center in support, National Association of Social Workers, Hawaii Chapter in support. Not here. Wendy Gibson Viviani in support. And late testimony from the Department of Public Safety offering comment. But also not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2375? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item. SB 2624, SD2 HD1 relating to health. And this requires DOH to implement a telehealth pilot project and publish an evaluation report on the telehealth pilot project outcomes. It exempts the telehealth pilot project from public procurement requirements for a period of 12 months with certain conditions. It requires the department to implement and administer a rural healthcare pilot project to provide physicians and nurse practitioners serving selected rural areas with an availability fee and reimbursements for certain expenses, and submit to the legislature an evaluation report on the rural healthcare pilot project outcomes. On SB 2624, we have the State Council on Developmental Disabilities.
Thank you. We stand on testimony and support.
Thank you for standing on your testimony in support. We also have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. We have Disability and Communications Access Board in support. Hawaii State Council on Mental Health in support, offering comments. Hawaii State Center for Nursing offering comments. University of Hawaii in support. Hawaii Primary Care Association in support.
Yes, hi, Eric Abe for the Hawaii Primary Care Association. We support the intent of this bill. We've been working with the Department of Health on amendments to ensure that the project is fully integrated with existing providers who utilize telehealth services with specialists at federally qualified health centers. We submitted these amendments to the previous committee. However, it was received late, and these amendments were not integrated into the bill. And so we ask for your favorable consideration of the amendments that we're proposing. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Eric. We also have the Hawaii Medical Association in support. Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition in support. Queens Health Systems in support. Hawaii Psychiatric Medical Association in support. An individual testimony from Faith Tui Polotu in support. And Rosie Davis in support, but not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2624? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, and we will move on to our next agenda item, SB 3248, SD1 HD1 relating to ambulances. This appropriates funds to the Department of Health to purchase one advanced life support ambulance and related equipment to be based on the island of Molokai and pay related personnel costs for the state certified emergency medical services personnel. On this measure, we have the Department of Health offering comments.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. We and members of the committee and Vice Chair, we stand on our written support offering comments. I was also asked to convey apologies from Speedy Bailey, AMR, who also submitted testimony that was called away unexpectedly. So I offer his apologies to the committee. Thank you very much for the opportunity to testify.
Okay. Thank you. We also have the Department of Budget and Finance offering comments. Council Chair Alice Lee, Maui County Council in support. Queens Health System in support. Hana Health in support. And Rosie Davis in support. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 3248? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, and we'll move on from the Health and Human Services and Homelessness section of the agenda to the Energy and Environmental Protection section of our agenda. We have SB 2196, SD2 HD1 relating to electric vehicle charging stations. This bill, after January 2023, prohibits the issuance of a building permit for any new multifamily residential building that has 10 or more parking stalls, unless those stalls are electric vehicle charger ready. requires cooperative housing corporations, homeowners associations, planned community associations, and condominium associations to develop plans to incorporate zero emissions infrastructure, including electric vehicle charging systems, onto any of the residential properties that are constructed after January 1, 2023. On SB 2196, we have the Hawaii Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission in support. Leah Laramie. Oh, sorry, not here. But in support. We have the Hawaii State Energy Office in support. Hi, Maria. Go ahead. We have Maria Tomei with the Hawaii State Energy Office.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Maria Tomei with the Hawaii State Energy Office. We will stand on our testimony in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. We also have Chair Larry Beret with the Pearl City Neighborhood Board in support. We have CAI offering comments. Bill Nerdy.
Chair, Vice Chair, and committee members, CAI stands on its written testimony supporting the intent of the bill.
Okay. Thank you very much, Phil. We also have 350 Hawaii in support, Hawaii EV Association in support, Big Island Electric Vehicle Association in support, Richard Emery from Associa with comments, Sonia Cass with Kauai EV in support, the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, Tiffany Ajima.
Good afternoon, Chair. We will stand at our written testimony in support.
Thank you very much, Tiffany. We also have Gentry Homes in opposition. Hawaiian Electric in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson and Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee. June Chi on behalf of Hawaiian Electric. We submitted written testimony supporting the intent of this measure and proposed some amendments. Thank you for considering these amendments and the opportunity to testify.
Okay, thank you very much, June. We also have DR Horton in opposition. We have Tesla in support. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm here.
Oh, sorry about that, Mike. Sorry, hold on one second, Sandy.
Mike Yosua on behalf of DR Horton. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. You have our comments. I just wanted to highlight that our main concern is with the Section 1 HD1 version, mandating 100% of new parking stalls in multifamily to be EV charger ready. There's already a mandate at the state, at the county land use ordinance, which requires 25%. We feel this is a sufficient amount for now, the amount of electric vehicles on the road. This 100% mandate would substantially increase the cost of homes. And, with the increased cost of construction material, with logistics, with, increased interest rates, all these factors are really putting a lot of projects out of price for the market. So we suggest that the committee consider deferring this measure as of now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, and sorry about that. We also have, now we have Tesla. Sorry about that, Sandy.
No problem. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sandy Wong on behalf of Tesla. Tesla did submit written testimony in support, which I will stand on. I did want to bring to your attention that we are asking for one friendly amendment. Instead of the definition for EV charger ready being basically 208/240 votes, we're asking that it be increased. 208/240 is level 1. We're asking that it be increased to level 2. And the difference is that with level 1, you can go about 3 to 5 miles per hour. With level 2, you can actually go 25 to 30 miles. Also, typically, it takes about 40 hours to fully charge with level 1, and it takes 8 hours to fully charge with level 2. And I did want to just follow up to the previous testifier in regards to cost. I do live in a condo, which was built in 1980. It does not have EV charging. For us to retrofit the do EV charging, it would, and this is just two little chargers. It would cost us over $40,000. If we put it in now, or if we put it in at the time of development, it would cost us 10 times less. And so basically, you know, I think when they talk about cost, they're being very, I can't remember the saying, where they're trying to save a penny, but they're actually spending a pound. You know, it's better to pay the cost up front because it's much cheaper, much more economical versus paying for it after the building is built, because then you're paying 10 times more. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sandy. We also have NIAP, Evan Oye, in opposition.
Aloha, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. Evan Oye on behalf of NIAP Hawaii. We stand our testimony in strong opposition to the measure, as it will significantly raise the cost of housing in Hawaii and potentially prevent housing projects from being developed altogether. Mahalo for the opportunity to testify. We'll be available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Evan. We also have BIA Hawaii in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Stephanie Sakamoto on behalf of BIA Hawaii. We'll stand in our written testimony in opposition, and we'll also echo the comments from DR Horton and NIAP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. We also have numerous individual testimonies in support and one opposition on this measure, but not indicating that they would be present to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2196? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Representative Clark.
I think I'm going to call Mr. Uyasua up. Good afternoon, Mr. Uyasua. Thank you for being here personally in person. We appreciate your testimony. Okay, so this is an issue I follow all the time. And let's go through your verbal testimony with respect to this 25% requirement. And I'm sorry, so at the land use level, I'm sorry, I couldn't follow your.
Sure, correct, Representative. It's within the land use ordinance. Well, actually, no, it's in, I believe it's a separate issue, chapter 32 of the revised ordinances Honolulu.
Okay, so
under the energy code.
Okay,
Yeah.
and essentially they require 25% of the total number of stalls to be.
Correct.
And
For new
that-
builds.
Is there any, because I recall the specific bill before the city council, and the council actually put an exemption in for affordable housing. So 80% or below, like actually they did 100% because they're looking at workforce housing too. So they did 100% or below AMI was exempted out of this bill. So I guess the question I have right now is, what I'm trying to understand is we keep trying to, you know, you heard Ms. Long's testimony about it's cheaper doing it now. I want to understand, what is the impact on affordable housing?
That's a good question. I don't know if I could answer specifically for affordable housing, but if you look at the average cost, and we did kind of a comprehensive study, an average cost of what it would take to install EV chargers, and it was in the $10,000 to $20,000 range for new builds, depending on you know the type of homes being built and where the parking locations are and that kind of stuff. Affordable housing has a very narrow, if any, you know, they're basically subsidized. So whatever cost you add onto a subsidized unit, it's decreasing the likelihood that they'll continue on with that project. And, you know, again, this is at 25%. That was a substantial cost. At 100% of new multifamilies, I think a lot of projects are just going to be priced out.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Evan, you know, can you come up also? Sorry, there's no affordable housing developers here because I would be drilling them.
No.
So
Thank you,
similar to the questions I've asked of you on behalf of NIAP, I mean, the biggest issue right now is, you know, I look at the affordable housing population and those are defined as 60% and below AMI, right? 60% and AMI below. So again, many of them don't have access to electric vehicles. So if we were to mandate this and yet they don't own EVs, why are we doing this? For what purpose are we mandating this into an affordable housing project if they don't actually own EVs? So that's just a rhetorical question. So getting back to my question to you. So with respect to NIAP's position, why are you guys contending that this would impact affordable housing?
Oh, we echo the similar comments from Mr. Yosu as well. We have found that the housing units will go up in price approximately $20,000. We did a study, or there was some data found that when they installed EV ready charging stations on new construction, there was approximately, I think, $18,300 impact on that project, and that was in 2019. And so being that it's 2022, 3 years later, the costs could have significantly risen. And we're worried that that cost will be passed on to consumers and our local residents who are trying to get into these housing projects and price them out.
Right, but that's for, for sale fee simple types of units. I'm talking about rental units. And I think Mr. Yusu talked about that. We're talking about LIHTC, finance units. We're talking about private activity bonds. We're talking about anything that we get money from the rental housing revolving funds. Essentially, playing Peter to play Paul, or whatever it is. Right. What we're doing is, we're taking money from the rental housing revolving fund to pay for things like this, right? To just subsidize our affordable housing units, right? Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Har. Representative Onishi.
Yeah, I'd like to call up the Energy Office.
Aloha, Representative. This is Maria Tomei.
Hi, thank you for being here. My question is, have you guys cost out this mandate?
This requirement in this bill is actually newly added. The previous version had a study. So no, we have not done an analysis of the cost of what's required in this bill.
Do you have any figures in regards to the cost of installing a new charging station in a new home?
The person who will be testifying later is more familiar with those numbers, and we can get those numbers for you. If you're talking about what's required in this one, which is EV ready, rather than actually having the charger, it would be helpful to specify that when we get you that information. Thanks.
Okay, so in your testimony, in terms of the State Energy Office, you don't have this information yet. You are supporting us mandating 100% of parking stalls to be EV ready.
We're supporting
what the cost is.
Sorry, we are supporting that this measure would be helpful in achieving Hawaii's energy goals.
Well, let me ask you, as the State Energy Office, what is your projection in the development of hydrogen vehicles?
I do not know if we have a projection by year for hydrogen vehicles. We can check and get back to you on that one too.
So if a development, right, that's 10 or more, has these charging stations, but the people living in there have hydrogen vehicles, are we going to ask them to convert to a hydrogen fuel station?
It sounds to me like a plan might actually be a good idea. Which the Energy Office has supported in many different forms. So I thank you for that question.
Why aren't we mandating that now, knowing that hydrogen vehicles may be the thing of the future?
Sorry, why is the legislature not doing something?
Well, why aren't you guys proposing that?
I believe that you made a case for coming up with a plan.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Onishi. Members, any additional questions? Okay, maybe I have one if Maria, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Quick question. So is there a difference in cost and technology between level 2 charging stations and level 1?
Yes.
This bill is focused on level 1, right?
Yeah, level 1 is just like your regular outlet. So if you were to run, an extension cord to an outlet that's in your home or office, that's level 1 charging. And so, you can get a certain number of miles from that, that replacement energy.
Which is
The
why
level-
it's diminished. Oh, sorry. Excuse me.
Right. So it takes a while, but if you charge, if you have it plugged in frequently, then it's sufficient. If you are trying to charge a large battery starting from a very low level of charge, you've gone a couple hundred miles, then of course the numbers I think the Tesla folks shared with the committee would be, it would take a while, right? Many hours. So that's the difference. So at least if you had a level 1 charge, then you would be able to, top off, if you're using it to commute. And especially in Hawaii, I think it actually is even more appropriate. And if you want the level 2, then at least a lot of the stuff is already there if you are EV, if you're ready. So that is one of the benefits. And no, we have not cost all this out.
Okay. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you.
Members, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none then, thank you. We'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2474, SD1 HD1. This is relating to renewable energy. This requires the PUC to establish reliability standards and interconnection requirements for renewable energy projects and community-based renewable energy projects. On SB 2474, we have DCCA, the Division of Consumer Advocacy, offering comments.
Aloha Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, members of the committee, Dean Ishino with the Division of Consumer Advocacy. We stand on our written testimony offering comments, but I am available for questions if any. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dean. We also have Commission Chair Jay Griffin, Hawaii Public Utilities Commission, offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. David Parsons on behalf of the Public Utilities Commission. You have our testimony offering comments, and we'll stand on those. Available for any questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, David. We also have Hawaiian Electric in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Hawaiian Electric is testifying in opposition of SB 2474. We appreciate the recent revisions to the bill, but they do not go far enough to address our concerns. While Hawaiian Electric understands the significance of the issues raised in the preamble of this bill, we do not believe the bill will address these concerns. First, the bill notes a delay in the interconnection of stage 1 and stage 2 projects. It has been well documented that delays in the interconnection study process for stage 1 were largely due to developers' failure to provide working models to start these studies. There have been no documented company delays in the interconnection studies for stage 2 projects. The large majority of delays outside of this model issue were for both stage 1 and stage 2 projects have been caused either by developers making equipment changes on their own, which require restudy, or by the COVID-19 pandemic and resulting supply chain crisis, rising prices and delaying manufacturing and shipping of equipment. None of the foregoing delays would be resolved by this bill. Further, Hawaiian Electric has committed to improvement of the interconnection process for utility scale renewable projects. And these improvements have been made between our stages 1 and stage 2. And we have most recently also announced several significant changes for our stage 3 procurement to improve interconnection. In addition, the Commission is already addressing this issue through both adopted and proposed mechanisms in the performance-based rate-making docket. Further, this bill does not properly describe the interconnection process. The first step in completion of an interconnection is the completion of an interconnection requirement study. The design of the interconnection is done after this, largely by the developer and not the utility as suggested in the bill. In addition, the design the procurement and construction of these facilities is largely completed by the developer and not within the control of the utility. Therefore, imposing deadlines or requirements on the utility would likely be ineffective to address the issues. Finally, the interconnection process is specific to each project and must be flexible to adjust for changes due to permitting requirements financing restrictions, community feedback, and other factors that could impact the fundamental design of interconnection. If the process developed is too rigid, this could result in unintended consequences, such as projects being terminated, further delayed, or lack of community support for projects. The technologies being implemented on Hawaii's system are leading edge technologies, which have not been implemented at this scale or scope anywhere else across the nation. Prescribing timelines to manage the process misses the point that we are at the forefront of the industry with plans to displace traditional generating resources with new inverter technologies with functions that have not yet been in operation. Our responsibility is to ensure the safe and reliable state of our grid, and this bill would hinder us in doing that.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. We also have the Hawaii Clean Power Alliance offering comments. Not here. And we have individual late testimony in opposition from John Kawamoto. John, are you there?
I'm trying to get on. Oh, there I am.
Okay, yeah, we can see and hear you. There you are.
Hello, my name is John Kawamoto. Everyone who has children or plans to have children should oppose the thinking behind this bill. Last year, the legislature declared a climate emergency because our efforts to reduce carbon emissions have been paltry compared to what is needed. Carbon emissions due to human activity are higher than ever and going even higher. Data from the Mauna Loa Observatory show that the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased unabated every year since 1959 until now, and Hawaii is part of that frightening trend. Carbon dioxide, once emitted, stays in the atmosphere for 300 to 1,000 years, according to the National Aeronautical and Space Administration. We are observing only the beginning of the effects of climate change. Scientific data indicate that in the coming decades, climate change will cause even more extreme wildfires, floods, and droughts. We can prevent a global climate catastrophe, but we have to be willing to make sacrifices. The livability of Earth for future generations is at stake. This bill falls short because it encourages renewable energy, but not clean renewable energy. Renewable energy includes dirty energy, such as the burning of trees. Coal is considered to be dirty energy, and the burning of trees is even dirtier. The legislature has set targets of 100% renewable energy and zero carbon emissions. Due to the climate emergency, these targets should be moved up, and we should be moving as quickly as possible toward a clean, renewable energy future. This bill is not part of that desired future, and the committee should hold the bill. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, John. Members, please note that's the extent of proper testimony. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2474? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on the measure? Sure. Representative Onishi.
Yeah, let's see. I guess for the PUC, they here?
Yes, Representative.
Yeah, in the bill on page 7, paragraph 3, it says if the electric public utility fails to meet the requirements established by the commission pursuant to this subsection, the electric public utility shall forfeit and return all money or other financial incentives that the electric public utility has received as part of any performance incentive, mechanism, program, or similar incentive-based award recognized by the commission in connection with the renewable energy project. So my understanding is the PUC also controls rates, right, for the electric company. And these incentives or other types of, I guess, funding that the public utility or the electric public utility receives goes into the determination of rates. Is that correct? Or is that all profit to the utility?
If I understand you right, you are correct. The way we typically would establish a performance incentive, if the utility is to receive an incentive, an award, then that money would be coming from customers, so it would be part of the rates. If it's a penalty, then it's money that the shareholders would pay back to customers and would be returned in the form of lower rates to customers.
So doesn't the public utility also control how much the Public Utility Commission control how much the utilities return on investment to its stockholders?
Well, in that case, what the commission typically does is establish an authorized rate of return for that accounts for its equity, the stockholders, what they've contributed to the business, as well as other kinds of capital that the utility utilizes, like debt financing, for example. What the utility actually earns in terms of profit is a function of how much they actually spend and what the revenues actually are. So they sometimes will exceed the authorized rate of return that the commission allows, and they sometimes will fall short depending on how they do with their business, how efficient the financial performance of the business.
Okay, so if they are penalized and they don't meet that authorized level of return, does the Public Utilities Commission then in the next rate setting compensate the company for that loss?
If it was a penalty, if they were penalized because they didn't achieve a performance target and the performance incentive called for a penalty in that case, then no, that would have to be paid by the utilities shareholders, and that would be returned to customers. And typically we don't allow for what they might call retroactive rate rate making, where you're adjusting rates on a going forward basis for past performance or lack thereof. We typically set rates going forward based on a forward-looking projection of what the business is expected to do, just looking forward. But that is all based on the prior cost of service rate making process, and we've transitioned for Hawaiian Electric Company and its subsidiaries to a performance-based regulation approach, where we set the rates based on a formula, and we don't necessarily return back to looking at what their costs are or what their profits are in the same way as we had done in the past.
Okay, so when I read this bill in terms of establishing these requirements, so who actually ends up determining what these requirements would end up being?
So the commission didn't draft this measure, Representative, but if I understand, what this measure calls for, this would require the commission to establish interconnection procedures and processes, and those would be developed probably in a docket process that the utility and other stakeholders would participate in. Ultimately, the commission would put forth what the interconnection procedures are, and the section that you were referring to, I think, would require that if the utility isn't following those procedures or processes, then they wouldn't be eligible for performance awards related to interconnection of renewable energy projects. So it basically says, if you don't meet the standards that the commission would establish, then you wouldn't be eligible to get a bonus payment, essentially.
So in this same section, it says that if the utility is unable to comply with the requirements of this subsection, the utility shall report in writing reasons for non-compliance to the commission within 10 calendar days after the failure to meet the timeline deadline established by the commission. So I guess my question is, what happens after they make this report? You know, if there are some extenuating circumstances beyond the control of the utility, you know, I mean, what is taken into account to determine whether or not they were capable of meeting the requirements within the specified time frame?
So that could depend on the kinds of procedures or processes that the commission would be required to establish under this section. For the existing performance incentives that the commission's already put in place for Hawaiian Electric, there's a process where the utility at the beginning of each year will report out to the commission, and it's all public in the docket, what their performance was in the prior year, according to all the different metrics or targets performance targets that have been set out. And then they're eligible for rewards, or they may be subject to penalties depending on where they land on those performance targets. There have been cases where the utilities have requested waivers, so to speak, or leeway on some of the performance targets. But generally speaking, what we would normally want to do is make sure to set the targets in a fair way at the outset, so that it's really just a matter of, you know, did you make it or not? And it's not as much a question of, you know, what were the circumstances. But that can be a challenging aspect of setting performance awards. And so, you know, it does take some time, and the devil is really in the details at the beginning of that process, and setting out what those performance targets should be, and making sure they're calibrated well to the utility's existing performance, or to what we're looking for out of them going forward, so that it provides, you know, an effective incentive. If the targets are not achievable for some reason, it's gonna be difficult to really actually motivate the utility to try for them in the first place.
So in your testimony, right, and right now, you're saying that the commission already sets goals and objectives, timelines that the utility is asked to meet, and there are incentives and penalties. So if that is the case, why do we need this bill if you can already do it, if you can already review what you have established and amend it, or, you know, come up with new guidelines, new schedules, new performance measures, etc. So I don't understand the purpose of having to do this if you can already do it.
So I believe you are correct that the commission already has the authority to establish interconnection standards and performance incentives associated with any kind of interconnection process or procedure. Just to clarify though, we haven't done it in the way that is prescribed in this measure. I think if this measure were to pass, I think the commission would need to take a look at what's in this, what the specific requirements are here. And there's some additional things that, you know, certainly we don't have in terms of, you know, guidance from the legislature, like the sections that you were referring to earlier. So those haven't been part of the consideration of establishing any of the existing incentives. And most of the existing incentives are associated with other kinds of utility performance. This bill, if I understand, would be focusing in on larger scale renewable energy projects, the interconnection of those facilities in particular. We've already established performance incentives related to interconnection for small scale projects like rooftop solar, for example, and other areas of performance, but we haven't established any incentives specific to the ones that are called for in this measure.
Okay, but you guys could, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any additional questions? Okay, seeing no further questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item. SB 2483, also relating to energy. This requires the Hawaii Energy Institute to evaluate the benefits and costs of dispatching renewable energy resources, considering the context of ongoing state energy planning efforts. And on SB 2483, we have the Hawaii State Energy Office offering comments.
Aloha Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Maria Tomei with the Hawaii State Energy Office. We'll stand on our testimony offering comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. We also have Hawaii Clean Power Alliance in support. Not here. University of Hawaii offering comments. Oh, sorry, not here. Thank you. We have Hawaiian Electric in opposition.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. You have our written testimony, but I just wanted to highlight a few points that, the bill as currently amended, we do not think that it is necessary. We are currently undergoing our integrated grid planning process to update long-range renewable energy plans, where we will analyze the issues that are put forth in the bill. Additionally, HNEI is engaged with us in that process, and from time to time will also do their own independent analysis to verify or validate some of the findings that we make. I'll be here to answer any further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Members, please note we have additional individual testimony in support proffered on this measure, but not necessarily indicating that they would be here to testify. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2483? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2510, SD2HD1 relating to renewable energy. This amends the Hawaii State Planning Act to give consideration to reducing reliance on energy imports, ensuring that all new utility scale electricity generation projects are renewable, balancing of grid resources, including firm renewable energy resources, reliable replacement of fossil fuel generation with balanced grid resources, prohibiting fossil fuel generation after December 31st, 2045, except in certain circumstances, and expanding vocational training in renewable energy and related industries. On SB 2110, we have the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair and Vice Chair. This is Mary Alice Evans with the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development. If the legislature's intent is to amend the State Planning Act, we welcome that, and the HD1 has good language that fits the Hawaii State Planning Act. If the legislature's intent is to have the state lead agency for the functional plan area, energy functional plan, update the functional plan, the Office of Planning and Sustainable Development has a role in that in Chapter 22656 to provide guidelines, but we don't take the lead in creating functional plan updates. That is the role of the state agency that has that the subject matter expertise in that area. So stand by for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary Alice. We also have the Hawaii State Energy Office in support.
Aloha, yes, Maria Tomei, Hawaii State Energy Office in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. We also have Division of Consumer Advocacy at DCCA offering comments.
Aloha again, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony offering comments available for questions, if any. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Dean. We have Our Revolution Hawaii in opposition. We have Hawaii Forest Stewards offering comments. We have Ulupono Initiative offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, and members of the committee. Mike Monikata on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. We'd like to stand on our testimony offering comments. Some comments and concerns that we have is just regarding, like the previous bill, some of the integrated grid planning process that's undergoing, and a lot of the work that's being done at that level seems to address what this bill's looking into. And just wanted to state that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Micah. We also have Climate Protectors Hawaii in opposition. Sustainable Energy Hawaii offering comments. ILWU Longshore Division 142 Local 100 in support. Not here. Energy and Climate Action Committee Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party of Hawaii in support. Not here. Hawaii Clean Power Alliance offering comments. Here. Pacific Biodiesel Technologies in support. Not here. And Hawaiian Electric offering comments.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We do offer comments. We appreciate and support the intent of the bill. We do offer a few amendments in the written testimony related to requiring all new generation to be renewable. I think our IGP process will look at that issue. Certainly, we're committed to the renewable RPS mandate. However, there may be some cost implications to doing that, switching and doing that conversion immediately prior to 2045. We also provide some amendments to the suggested amendments to the firm renewable energy definition, noting that it did include firm renewable energy as being subject to having a power purchase agreement, but not all firm generation across the Hawaiian Electric territories are subject to a PPA. And I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. We also have Recycle Hawaii and Clean the Pacific in opposition. Not here, and 350 Hawaii in opposition. We have individual testifiers indicating that they will be present. John White in support.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Chair and Committee, for having this public hearing. My name is John White, resident of Kailua. I am in strong support of SB 2510, and I stand on my written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, John. We also have individual testimony and support from Anthony Padilla.
Hi, thank you. Hello?
Oh, yes, please go ahead, Anthony. Sorry about
Okay,
that.
I'm here. That's okay. Thank you, Chair and members and of the committee for letting me speak. My name is Anthony Padilla. A resident of Waimanalo. I'm in strong support of SB 2510 and stand by my written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anthony. We also have individual testimony in support from Blair Nahale. Not here. Louis Manzanes Jr. in support.
Hello, thank you, Chair and Committee. Can you see me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Louis Manzanes. I'm a resident of Kaneohe. I'm in strong support of Bill SB 2510, and I stand by my written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louis. We also have Richard Gideon, or I'm sorry, we have Keikoa Masutani in support.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, thank you for your time. I'm a resident of, my name is Keikoa Masutani. I'm a resident of Kahalu, Hawaii, and I'm in strong support of SB 2510. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keikoa. We also have Seth Eli in support. Seth Eli,
Yes.
are you here?
Hello.
Sorry.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. My name is Seth Eli, I'm resident of Carden, and I stand by my written.
Thank you very much, Seth. And I'm sorry for mispronouncing your last name.
No worries. Thank you.
We also have Richard Gideon in support.
Aloha, Chair and Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. I stand on my written testimony in strong support of SB 2510. Thank you very much for letting me speak today. Aloha.
Thank you very much, Richard. We also have Chris Tanaka in support. With not here. Zorek Palimo'o in support.
Hello, Chair and members of this committee. My name is Zork Palimomo, resident on Oahu, and I stand behind my written testimony in strong support of Senate Bill 2510. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Zorek. We also have late testimony in opposition from John Kawamoto.
Thank you for letting me submit this late testimony. My name is John Kawamoto. Hawaii should embrace a clean, renewable energy future. This bill is not part of that desired future, and the committee should hold it. Advocates for this bill should show how the thinking embodied in this bill, if adopted globally, would bend the Mauna Loa Observatory carbon dioxide curve downward. This curve shows a relentless increase in the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere year after year, making the Earth warmer and warmer. If they cannot show that the concentration of carbon dioxide will level off and be reduced soon, the Earth will be headed toward a climate catastrophe in the coming decades that will end civilization as we know it. Those who think that this is hyperbole should take a look at the latest climate data and make sure it's data from reliable sources, such as scientific journals, and not the fake data that's flying around. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, John. Members, please note that we have numerous testimonies in support and some in opposition from individuals, but not indicating that they would be present. Is there anyone else wishing to testify in SB 2510 whom I haven't called? Again, any other testifiers on SB 2510? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our last agenda item, SB 2720, SD2 HD1 relating to energy. This allows new electric vehicle charging stations and certain upgrades having a single port to qualify for a rebate, removes the 500,000 cap on the electric vehicle charging station rebate program, and specifies that no rebate shall be approved after available funds are exhausted for the fiscal year. It increases the flexibility of the PUC to administer the electric vehicle charging station rebate program. It increases the percentage of funds that the Public Utilities Commission may use for administration of the rebate program from 10 to 15%. Members, please note we did also pass a measure, a House bill that was substantially similar to this. On SB 2720, we have our first testifier, the PUC, in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Thank you for hearing this measure. The Commission's in support of this. I'll stand on our testimony, available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. We also have the Hawaii State Energy Office in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, member of the committees, Chris Shunker with the Hawaii State Energy Office. We stand on our written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. We also have the City and County of Honolulu Department of Design and Construction in support. We have the Pearl City Neighborhood Board Chair in support. We have the Office of Economic Development, County of Kauai in support. City and County of Honolulu Office of Climate Change, Sustainability and Resiliency in support. Hawaii Energy offering comments. Ulupono Initiative in support.
Thank you, Chair. Ulupono will stand on its testimony and support. We're very much supportive of the House Draft 1 amendments that were made. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We have the Kauai Women's Caucus in support, Kauai EV in support, 350 Hawaii in support, Hawaii EV Association in support, Big Island Electric Vehicle Association in support, the Hawaii Auto Dealers Association in support.
Chair, Vice Chair, I'm David Rolfe with the Hawaii Automobile Dealers Association. We'll stand on a written testimony in support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave. We also have the Alliance for Automotive Innovation in support. Tiffany Ajima. Guess she has left. Blue Planet Foundation in support. They are not here. Energy and Climate Action Committee, Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party in support. Hawaiian Electric in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Hawaiian Electric stands on its written testimony in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have individual testimony in support. John Kawamoto. Do you want to testify? John Kawamoto. Okay, I guess he's done, so no. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2720? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? Okay, seeing no questions, then we will recess for decision making. Recess. Okay, reconvening our 2 p.m. agenda for decision-making purposes. On SB 3025, the recommendation here is to take the proposed amendments by the DFI Commissioner, as well as conforming amendments to wherever there's the use of digital units mentioned, clarifying that that's digital representation of value. So substituting that word so that it's consistent throughout, as well as defining a control person. It's already got a defective date. So with that, members, any comments or questions on the recommendation to pass with amendments?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
thank you so much for the recommendation, and I do respect the recommendation. That said, I do feel that at this time, this measure is a bit premature. Based on the testimony from Ms. Jackson, I think the feds are still looking at this, and to implement such a rigorous program at this juncture, I think may be a bit premature. So respectfully, I'll be voting with reservation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Har. Members, any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3025 SD2 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Aquino. Representative Hart. WR. Representative Hashem is excused. Representative Kong.
With reservation.
Okay, with reservations, Representative Mizuno is excused. Representative Morikawa.
Aye.
Representative Onishi.
Aye.
Representative Tarnas.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto. Aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members on SB 2695 relating to cryptocurrency. I think this is also a good vehicle that I'd like to keep moving in this ever-evolving discussion about digital currency. The recommendations here are to pass with amendments, including reducing the number of legislative members from 3 in the Senate and 3 in the House to 1 in the House and 1 in the Senate. They will be appointed by the Senate President and Speaker respectively. They will also be designated as co-chairs of the task force. The DCCA representative, I'd like to change that to the DFI commissioner or their designee. I'd like to make the appointing authority for the UH professor, the UH president. I'd also like to delete the outdated contents relating to political party representation that was specific to the 6 members of the legislature, now that it's only 2. I would also like to add in a representative of blockchain cryptocurrency community, security community, and additionally a representative of the blockchain crypto legal community. They would both be appointed by the governor, as well as inserting a defective date of January 1, 2050, and making technical non-substantive amendments, as well as noting in the committee report that if the Finance Committee decides to hear this bill, noting the concerns of the DFI commissioner that they would probably need resources to effectuate and assist this task force. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendations for amending this measure? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2695 SD2 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Hashem and Mizuno, who will be noted absent for the rest of today's agenda. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Thanks, members. Next on SB 2076 SD2 HD1, the recommendation here is to pass with amendments. This is similar to HB 2397, which we heard and passed. The amendments to SB 2076 include removing the references to the authority regulating broadband activity and infrastructure, given the potential federal preemption issues. I'd like to substitute oversee and coordinate with any use of the word regulate or regulatory or its derivative. Also clarifying amendment that indemnification is applicable to a member of the authority's board. Further clarifying that the conflict disclosures required in this bill are made to the board's executive director, as well as technical non-substantive amendments. I do have the prior concurrence of the Higher Education and Technology Chair to make these amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing on Vice Chair for the vote, please.
Recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2076 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members on SB 2385 SD2 HD1 relating to procurement. On this measure, I would like to take the state procurement officers amendments, which I think further help to provide flexibility in the situation of professional services only having less than 3 bidders, but still pointing it back to the state procurement code and making sure that there's transparency and accountability and double check mechanisms with the state procurement office in her amendment. I do have the prior concurrence of the GVR chair, and it already has a effective date. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendations for amendments? Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the recommendation. I absolutely support you. That said, I will be voting respectfully with reservations. I do think that this isn't a very isolated problem. It does not necessarily have to be dealt with in the manner in which SBO is suggesting. If anyone knows, I'm a very pragmatic person. That would be you, Chair. You know that when it comes to laws, we're very pragmatic. So I recognize the issue, but again, I don't think it's pervasive to the extent that it would require this somewhat, this exemption. And so respectfully, I'll be voting with reservations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Clark. Members, any other comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2385 SD2 HD1 with amendments noting the reservations of Representative Parr. Are there any additional reservations? Reservations, Representative Onishi. Any additional? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 3040 relating to procurement, recommendation is to pass this measure as is. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3040 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 3369 SD2 HD1 relating to procurement. The recommendation here is to provide a clarifying amendment in the event that a department is headed by a board or a chair of a board, since it's now written assuming all the wording of the bill is assuming all state executive department directors are just directors. Also taking the state procurement officers amendments exempting DOE to comport with the other exemptions already expropriated in this bill, and taking the state procurement officers amendments to include in the working group recommendations a certified training program, as well as the implementation of a procurement automation system. It's already got a defective date. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3369 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 3372 SD1 HD1 relating to public procurement. The recommendation here is to pass with amendments, including the state procurement officer's suggested amendments on this bill, as well as the previous measure. I should note that I also have the prior concurrence of the GVR chair to make these amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay. Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3372 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 2644 SD2 HD1. Please note that some of this is substantially similar to the House vehicle that was passed, HB 1597, out of this committee. On SB 2644, I would like to make several amendments, including with the prior concurrence of the Labor and Tourism Chair, making the extension just 5 years instead of 10. Also removing the reference to substation work in the exemption language to further clarify and narrow the scope, as well as technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank you so much for limiting the scope of this bill, first of all, to the overhead transmission lines, as well as limiting the extent of this bill to 5 years. That said, I do find the testimony of the Contractors Licensing Board very compelling. So respectful of even with reservation.
Understood and noted. Thank you, Representative Farr. Any other comments or questions, Trevor? Okay. Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2644 SD2 HD1 with amendments noting the reservations of Representative Parr. Are there any additional reservations? Any reservations for Kong? Any other reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 3126 SD2 HD1 relating to the boiler and elevator safety law. With the prior concurrence of the Labor and Tourism Chair, I'd just like to insert a defective date of January 1, 2050. Just so that we have one more look at this before we likely ultimately pass this bill. So with amendments of just inserting a defective date of January 1, 2015. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3126 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, SB 3128 SD2 relating to the adequate reserve fund. We did pass out HB 2471, which is a substantially similar measure. On this, even though it does have a defective date, just so that the House has made at least one change, we retain some control with the prior concurrence of the Labor and Tourism Chair. I'm just going to change the effective date to January 1, 2050 so that there's an HD1. So with that simple amendment on SB 3128. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3128 SD2 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next on SB 3129 SD1 relating to the Unemployment Compensation Trust Fund, again with the prior concurrence of the Labor and Tourism Chair, just going to insert a different defective date of January 1, 2050, so that we've made, the House has made at least one amendment to this bill. Members, please note we did pass a substantially similar HB 1852 out of this committee. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation for that simple amendment? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3129 SD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 3142 SD1 relating to the workers' compensation law. We did not hear a House measure along these lines. So this is the only vehicle, but an interesting one. And with the prior concurrence of the Labor and Tourism Chair, I would like to insert a different effective date here for the same reasons as noted on the previous bills of just making sure that the House has made an amendment. So we retain some control. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation for amendment? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3142 SD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 3289 SD2 HD1 relating to the Hawaii Retirement Savings Program. The recommendation here is to pass this measure unamended and as is. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none then, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3289 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 2032 SD2 HD1 relating to genetic information privacy. The recommendation here, as it's already got a defective date and a House amendment, is to pass as is. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2032 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members, on SB 2276 HD2 SD2 HD1 relating to acupuncture. This is substantially similar to the House vehicle that we passed out, HB 1679, which is no longer alive since this crossed first and Finn didn't hear it. I'd like to move this measure with two amendments, several amendments. The Hawaii Acupuncture Association's amendments that they noted in their testimony, as well as the Hawaii Medical Association amendment noted in their testimony. I think this may help cure some of the dissonance between the Medical Association and the acupuncturists. That's at least my hope. Members, any comments or questions on the amendments? Okay, seeing none then, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2276 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members, on SB 2375 SD1 HD1 relating to social work. The recommendation here, I'm sorry, as I had on the prior bill with the concurrence of the Health and Human Services and Homelessness Chair, is to make one simple amendment and clarify that the report is a joint report between the Department of Public Safety and Department of Human Services. So this bill also with amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2375 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members, on SB 2624 SD2 HD1 relating to health. With the concurrence of the HHH chair, I would like to delete the wholesale exemption from the procurement code and the purchases of health and human services that is currently in the bill. So this would subject this pilot program to the procurement code as well as laws governing the purchases of health and human services. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2624 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. And on SB 3248 SD1 HD1 relating to ambulances, just technical and non-substantive amendments for clarity, style, and consistency. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3248 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 2196 SD2 HD1. The recommendation here, because I would like to keep the discussion going and with the prior concurrence of the EEP chair, is just to make this bill specific to electric vehicles. So clarifying, taking out the words zero emissions vehicles and making it just specific to the infrastructure for electric vehicles, given the prevalence of EVs in the transportation sector versus some of the other technologies. Also clarifying that this is newly constructed projects, since it wasn't abundantly clear. And it's already got a defective date. So with amendments, members, any comments or questions? Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First off, thank you so much for the recommendations. My first concern is that none of the county planning departments, in fact, submitted testimony, and it is the county planning departments that are in charge of building permits. So I would argue and assert that home rule is at issue here, first and foremost. Secondly, if anyone understands the affordable housing market with respect to new construction and multifamily dwellings, you know, if you look and understand the demographic, unfortunately, I think that, you know, many people in the affordable housing demographic, they want to do the right thing by the environment, but oftentimes they're financially precluded from doing so. And so, you know, to essentially assume that there should be 100%, you know, all parking stalls in a affordable housing unit should be EV ready only adds to the cost. We are in an affordable housing crisis, and all of these mandates only continue to make the cost of housing more and more expensive. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game between the environment and affordable housing. So I respect the chair wanting to continue the discussion, but I have major concerns about the impact on affordable housing for this particular measure. So respectfully, Chair, I'll be voting no.
Thank you, Representative Har. Representative Onishi.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have similar concerns as the previous speaker, but I also have concerns that the 100% mandate beginning January 2023 really sets an early timeline to make a decision on 100% of a facility on one alternative or zero emission vehicle requirement. And once you do that, you've already established this for the life of the building. It's not like you can uninstall it at no cost and then install some other type of alternative or zero emission need for that particular building or the residents of that building. So, you know, I believe the city and county requirement of 25% makes a lot of sense. That it is a phased approach. It shares the costs over the multiple units versus putting the cost on every single unit or every single parking space. So with that being said, I'm going to be voting no on this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative Onishi. Representative Morikawa.
Thank you, Chair. I share the same concerns, and it makes me very, very uneasy to look at a date coming up just a few months from now. And I believe that we are headed in a more renewable type of transportation, and it may not just be electrical, it may be some other type, solar, what have you. I just feel very uncomfortable right now, and I usually support bills that go through, but in this one, I'm gonna have to vote no.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any other comments or questions?
One more.
Representative Kong.
Thank you, Chair. As the Labor Chair actually mentioned and the previous speaker about the technological advances, I actually presume that the industry itself is probably looking at something like portable chargers. I don't see why it cannot be done, but the advance in technology happens daily now. So with that in mind, I'll probably be voting no.
Thank you, Representative Kong. Members, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, then I will just say, I recognize that this is a difficult bill for folks. One of the things that I think is helpful about the bill, and I recognize that it'll still add to costs, but I would like to note that I think the EEP chair tried very hard deliberately to structure this to level 1 so that it's the equivalent of putting an outlet where each parking stall, as opposed to something that might be a little bit more onerous and expensive. Again, I do acknowledge that that comes at a cost, but I think it's an important conversation to continue to have. So with that, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2196 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Reservations by Representative Matsumoto. Any additional reservations? And I have no's from Representatives Har, Kong, Morikawa, and Onishi. Any additional no's? Chair, your recommendation passes.
Thank you, members. Next on SB 2474 SD2 HD1 relating to renewable energy. The recommendation here is to pass as is. It's already got a defective date. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation?
Chair.
Yes, Representative Onishi.
Yeah, I have concerns in my in the hearing and the discussion with the PUC in regards to their ability to already do these kinds of things. And, I fail to see why we have to put this in law when they have the regulatory right or regime to address whether or not these, the infrastructure, the connectivity is being met, and they can make these adjustments as the PUC. So with that, this is a bill I feel that is unnecessary. And just the fact that we had a hearing gives the PUC guidance in terms of what they should be looking at and considering. I also have a problem with the penalties that may eventually affect rates. And it may not be because the utility just fails to do what they should be doing, but there might be extenuating circumstances that they have no control over. So with that, I'm going to be voting with reservations on this bill for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Onishi. Members, any other comments or questions? Okay. Seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2474 SD2 HD1 with, as is. Noting the reservations of Representative Onishi, are there any additional reservations? Representative Kong and Representative Har, are there any no's? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 2483 SD2 HD1 relating to energy, the recommendation here is to also pass this measure as is. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2483 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Reservations by Representative Kong. Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 2510 SD2 HD1 relating to renewable energy. The recommendation here is also to pass this measure as is. Members, any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2510 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Representative Kong. Any additional? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next on SB 2720 SD2 HD1 relating to energy. Recommendation here, as it's got a defective date, is also to pass this measure as is. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2720 SD2 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members and the public, for your perseverance, patience, and understanding. With that, we are adjourned.